Hey. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Rodent Control Frontiers, Monitoring Technology and the Science Behind Smarter Solutions. My name is Jennifer Wells, Project Coordinator here at the National Environmental Health Association, and I will be your host today. To begin today's webinar, I'll highlight the partnership between two organizations that made this webinar possible and provide a brief overview of each. Then I will introduce today's speakers who have a wonderful presentation planned for you, and we'll have a Q&A session following their presentation. And as we come to the end, we'll provide a few final announcements on upcoming opportunities. I have just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be uploaded onto the NEHA Vectors and Pests webinar page. You can also find recordings to previous webinars here as well. If you have any questions for our speakers during the presentation, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions, and we will get to as many as we can after the presentation. At the conclusion of the webinar, you'll receive a link to take part in an evaluation survey to provide feedback and comments on today's webinar. We ask that you take the time to let us know how we can continue to meet your needs as an organization. This webinar is brought to you in part through a collaboration between Gulf South Vector and NEHA through grant funding from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Now I'll quickly share some information about both organizations. The mission at the Gulf South Vector Educational Center for Training, Outreach, and Resources, or VECTOR for short, is to forge a robust, innovative, multidisciplinary, and cooperative regional network. They aim to provide innovative training and resources to professionals and students, creating a unified workforce that enhances regional capacity to monitor and respond to vector-borne disease threats. If you want to know more about this organization, you can scan the QR code or visit their webpage at vectoroutreach.org. The National Environmental Health Association is the professional home for people working to protect the public's health and environment. We've been around since 1937, supporting thousands of members in government, industry, and academia. Our mission is to build healthy environments, protect communities, and empower professionals through education, credentials, and advocacy. We offer nationally recognized certifications, ongoing training, mentoring, and a strong professional network. So when you join NEHA, you're joining a community that helps you grow, connect, and make a difference. And we invite you to learn more about how NEHA supports the environmental health workforce and how you can be a part of it. If you're not yet a member, becoming one is quick and easy. Just scan the QR code on this slide to get started today, and we'd love to have you as part of the NEHA community. We also have a couple of exciting webinars coming up very soon. So in 2 days, on November 14th, there's a food code webinar, which will preview NEHA's newest course. And on December 3rd, there is a webinar focused on building a prepared, responsive, and resilient environmental public health program when disaster strikes. So we encourage you to register using the links in the chat. And we are thrilled to invite you to NEHA's annual educational conference and exhibition, Woven Strong, the Environmental Health Tapestry, August 3rd to 6th, 2026 in Kansas City, Missouri. This year's theme embodies how every thread, our expertise, experiences, and innovations interlace to create a stronger, more resilient future in environmental public health. At AEC 2026, you can discover the latest research and best practices from across the field, gain fresh perspectives, and leave with practical ideas you can put into action, and connect with peers, mentors, and partners. So we encourage you to mark your calendars and be on the lookout for early bird registration opening in just a couple weeks on December 1st. And before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to share the learning objectives for this webinar. After today's session, you should be able to identify the limitations of traditional rodent control methods, explain how real-time data and AI can enhance rodent management practices, demonstrate how digital monitoring tools can be integrated into an existing rodent management program, and compare the impact of reactive versus proactive rodent control models. Now, I'm excited to introduce and welcome our speakers for today. First, we have Michael Moran. Michael is the Chief Risk and Sustainability Officer and Chief Markets Officer at Microshare, where he helps drive the company's brand and leads its global strategy on risk and sustainability. Throughout his career, he has helped major corporations adjust to the advent of the digital age. He is also a successful author, documentarian, lecturer at the University of Denver, and previously had a 20-plus year career as a journalist and foreign correspondent. Next, we have Courtney Karachi. Courtney is the Chief Operating Officer and co-owner of Pest End, bringing over 2 decades of experience to the pest control industry. Courtney holds pest control operator licenses and certifications in 3 states, and in 2010, she became certified by the National Entomology Scent Detection Canine Association, working as a canine handler for the company for several years. In 2019, she earned her Associate Certified Entomologist certification. Courtney is a graduate of the National Pest Management Association's Executive Leadership Program and a current participant in the Leader Launch Program. She serves as the president-elect of the New England Pest Management Association and contributes actively to both organizations through multiple committees. So with that, Michael and Courtney, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. I'm really honored to be here with Courtney in particular. We've got a collaboration going on through my company, Microshare, and it's fair to say that she is in the vanguard of people who are embracing technology as a way to make rodent control even more effective than it has been through the decades. What we're hoping to do today is give you a peek at some of the advances that have taken place in the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 years. Some of it is based on AI. Some of it is based on hard learning, basically hard knocks, because as with all technologies, if anybody remembers the sound that AOL used to make when you dialed in, showing my age, but it was slow and unreliable. Like all technologies, there's a tipping point, and I think we've now reached that with remote monitoring and the various things that we can do with it in making sure that it's an effective tool, cost effective, and precision driven. So I'm going to be quiet for a second. I think you got enough intro of me. I used to be a journalist. Now I work for a friend who started this brilliant company several years ago, and I invested. And I always say, like Michael Corleone, I thought I was out, and he pulled me back in. So now I'm doing the marketing, and I'm doing a great deal of the sustainability work and risk work for Microshare, which is a global company. We sell in Asia and Europe quite a bit. North America is our home. In Philadelphia is our base. And through this business, I got to know Courtney and her husband at Pest End, and many other people in this fascinating industry of pest control. It was an eye opener to go from the Shark Tank of media and then financial services, where they'll kill you in the morning for a dime, and then see what pest control industry is like. It's a really friendly group, and they really want to do the best job they can, which I love. So Courtney, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then maybe we'll just give some intro, and then I'll start the presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. And thanks to Neha for having us. We're really excited to be here. And I think we both offer some really valuable perspectives. Mike more from the technological side, and I'm more boots on the ground on the pest control side and the execution of the remote monitoring products. So really excited to be here today. And to Mike's point, I think it really is pest control has been slow to adapt to a lot of technology and technological advances. And this is one way in which I really think that the industry is moving in rather rapidly at this point. It's gaining a lot of traction, and it is redefining the way in which we are performing our services, especially when it comes to rodent control. We have a saying at our company that we don't want our technicians to be checknicians, which is basically just going around checking traps, replacing bait if needed, or resetting snap traps, things like that. And that isn't providing the best pest control services that we can. And remote monitoring has allowed us to really hone in on the challenges at some of our accounts and really dive deep into what is causing the issue and providing permanent solutions rather than just rebating and hoping for the best. So it's using data in a really smart way to inform our decision-making process when we're out in the field. So really excited to share a little bit more about remote monitoring and how we're using it and the advances that we're seeing and the benefits as this moves forward into the future.
Thanks, Courtney. So I'm going to start the presentation now. And as I do, I think what I'll do is just say a couple of things up top. Present from current slide. There we go. And there we are again. A caveat here. Courtney is the pest control professional here. I am a software guy. I mean, Microshare, which creates a product called EverSmart Pest, is a software company. And I think that's relevant to this conversation because we don't go out pretending to be pest control professionals, though we've been so ingrained in it. We're starting to get pretty good at the lingo. But basically, Courtney is really the person who brings the professional skill set. And so I thought it would be good, and I hope this doesn't bore some of you who've seen this stuff before, but to start where everybody seems to want to go and know they have to go, which is the Holy Grail, integrated pest management. And Courtney, I wonder if you could speak to this slide for a second and just give us a sense of how how you integrate this into your protocols, and then what remote monitoring does to change the game a little bit.
Absolutely. So IPM is the foundation of what we do in the pest control industry. We are not baseboard jockeys where we're going out and just spraying haphazardly. It really is a very intentional service that we're providing. And we really are, it's based in science. It's based in really understanding the customer's needs, their threshold for pest pressure, and that can depend significantly on the type of account and segment that you're dealing with. So as far as IPM goes, that is really the guiding principle for all pest control service providers. And it really begins with a thorough inspection of a facility to identify cultural, sanitational, and any other issues that are there that might be causing these conducive conditions that is elevating pest pressure. And then you move into that identification of, okay, what is actually going on here? You know, we're seeing some droppings. Is there's rodent droppings? What is happening here? Squirrels, we're seeing this activity. And then if there isn't anything going on as far as pest pressure, it's making sure that we're also monitoring and seeing what's going on. So in the past, we could use, and we still do, but there's different types of monitoring services and different types of boards that you can put out and insect monitors to see what is going on. So you're catching that pest before it exceeds the threshold that is acceptable to your customer. So that is really, monitoring is a huge piece of what we're doing, which translates really well into this, because it can be really challenging to monitor, especially for rodents, because they can come in. You open a garage door, you leave a door open as you're bringing in boxes, shipments, things like that. They can get in there. They are very, very agile and able to get into very, very tiny places. So that presents a problem, just identifying even where things are, how they're getting in, and where that pest pressure is happening. So once you hit that monitoring phase and you're identifying kind of where the activity is, maybe it's only in one area of the building, and then you can start focusing on that. Then you're putting your plan into action to say, okay, this is how we're going to reduce pest pressure. This is how we're going to help solve your problem. And then we're going to continuously evaluate, is what we're doing working? Do we need to do some follow-up services? What can we do here? And I think the biggest part and benefit of remote monitoring is that it really is a way in which it's a tool in our toolbox. It's not going to replace our technicians. That is a big fear that people have, that are we going to be out of a job because of AI and remote monitoring and all of these different tools that we're given. And really, all of this technology is so exciting. There's dashboards, there's filters, there's real-time data. But the truth is, it only matters if we're acting on that and we're responding to what we're seeing. So the systems can tell us that rodents are in drop ceilings, but that system can't climb a ladder, identify access points, or decide how to address that. So that's still on us as the pest control provider and as the pest professionals. So this technology is an amazing tool for us, but it's not going to replace experience. It is going to elevate the service that we provide, and it's really amplifying what we're doing. So data is giving us the what, but us as technicians are deciding the why and the how. And it's a really synergistic relationship that we have when it comes to this type of remote monitoring, which has been really valuable for us and helped us solve pest problems a lot more quickly than we could in the past, just by being able to identify areas to focus on rather than, you have a 50,000 square foot warehouse. It's really hard to figure out where things are coming from. So this is a really effective tool that helps us provide a better service and reduce the pest pressure in a much more efficient and quick manner.
Thanks, Courtney. And I want to jump on something you said there that I totally agree with. And I'm just going to put this slide up so people can absorb it while I'm chattering away here. But we, as a young company, we've been through the ringer of having to raise money for our survival. And investors often say, "Oh, I get it. This is like when banks suddenly had ATMs and they could get rid of all these tellers." It was like, no. The model that we think this is analogous to is more like Uber. Uber came along and everybody predicted the death of the taxi cab. Well, lo and behold, if you look at the actual numbers of the Uber has exploded, of course, and is a multi-billion-dollar company, but the taxi industry has also exploded. And that's because they saw this technology that Uber deployed, and now they have their own apps. So it's a very cool thing. This is a force multiplier. This is not a job destroyer, I think. However, there are things that would probably need to change in the business model, things that would need to change in terms of the way you schedule routing, what that actually does on site. Obviously, the labor savings and the wear and tear savings are part of the real benefit of this. And so I'll try to take you through the way we see this. And I'll say up front, I've tried to make this a very kind of generic look at remote monitoring technology, but naturally, EverSmart going to bleed through a little bit because we are software people. Some of the other systems out there are really more trapped with apps or Bluetooth, or I think of them more as 1.0. I think we're very much as 2.0, if not further along, because our stuff is in the cloud. That's all I'll say about that. But all of us, I think, would agree, all of us in this space would agree that this is kind of the vision for getting increasing the IPM quality of rodent control. So, the traditional thing is traps and poisons. Instead, you monitor for activity. You don't put the poison out. Many of the PCOs we deal with don't put poison out at all unless they can warrant it. It's warranted by activity. They also save a lot of money on licensing now because they just license a small number of their people who go out and respond kind of episodically to actual demand rather than on a constant rotating, routing. Reactive is the old way. Proactive, I think, is what we like to think of, the new one. Symptom driven versus prevention driven. That gets to something Courtney was saying about being able to actually put sensors in places where you'd never put a bait box or a trap, places where physically you couldn't, or where you wouldn't want it seen. You can put a small sensor up above a drop ceiling. You can put it under a crawl space, save your technician from having to climb a ladder or go under. And also, you can now tell where they're coming from. As Courtney was saying, we can find out what the route is when they come, the timing. So instead of being episodic, it's a 24/7 continual monitoring of a site. It's not as labor intensive. It's much more efficient. That means rather than just fulfilling a contract, you're able to send your tech, even if you want them to spend the same 3 hours every year, every month or every week. There's other things to do. There's upselling they can do. There's exclusion work they can do. And they can do, if you go back to that IPM chart, they can really intensively improve their inspection, and they can continually think about the kind of reaction they have. So those two key pieces of IPM that are not monitoring, inspection and action, are very much driven by the data that can be provided by remote monitoring if it's configured properly. Chemically intensive, old school. I think we are much more environmentally friendly, and you also have time on site if you're a technician to actually develop a relationship with your customer. Now, not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody wants their tech to do that, but it becomes much more of a you've got the time to do that. Think of it that way. And now here's where I'm going to, every time I talk through a slide, I'm going to defer to Courtney and ask her, what did I get wrong for you?
No, Mike, you really didn't get anything wrong. I think the big takeaway that you emphasized, which I wholeheartedly agree, is the being proactive rather than reactive. Too often in pest control in general, we're being reactive because someone's calling us when they are already having a problem. So now, once we're in a regular cadence of service, we want to be identifying pest pressure before it becomes a problem. And remote monitoring is one of the tools in which we are able to accomplish that, especially because you're getting notifications in real time if a device, a sensor is being triggered. And that in itself has created some challenges as to how do you respond to that, because if you have monthly service or weekly service, and how often should we be deploying our technicians if we're seeing that there's activity here? Is it right away? Does it depend on the pest pressure? Does it depend on the account? A food and drug account is going to have a much lower threshold for that than another type of a library, for example. So you really have to start, and it's something that we've been working through ourselves, just trying to identify what is the protocol and how do we deploy our team in a way that makes sense, and we're addressing the issues. So that is the being that proactive pest control operator is really important these days, especially with there's just so many inspections that happen, and we are protecting public health and the food supply. So we want to make sure, especially in food producing situations, that we are being very diligent when we're handling this, because a rodent, for example, can contaminate an entire line of products, which then leads to recalls. So there's a lot at stake when pest control is not done correctly. So this tool has really elevated our ability to be able to deliver the service that we want to and that our customers expect. And I'm seeing that more as a trend in the industry. And using that data, I can tell you personally, our company 5 years ago, we were not very data driven, and we were kind of just making decisions based off of feelings. And we have really shifted our mentality over the last 5 years company wide, and we cannot collect enough data now. We want to make sure that our decisions are being rooted in data, and that we're using that because data is telling part of the story. And we want to make sure that we're executing on that other part of the story, and we're solving that problem based off of what we're seeing there.
So you're probably, some of you wondering, okay, you're talking about this thing that we haven't seen yet. So how does it work? So again, this is the system that we use at Microshare, but it's not unusual. It's very similar to the remote monitoring, kind of architecture that some other groups use. So essentially, we use a PIR motion sensor. PIR is passive infrared technology. It basically will notice the presence of a warm-blooded creature. So cockroach, no, snake, no, but definitely any kind of mouse or squirrel or rodent will be noticed. And, the 1.0 versions of these things would just say, it's just the sensor we use is a really kind of dumb thing because we want to keep this, the edge where the sensor is, the edge of the system, is not where you should put the intelligence, right? Because you can only fit so much intelligence into a little wafer, or it's not like a hockey puck sized sensor. So we sometimes put those in bait boxes or in traps, but sometimes they're deployed outside of them as well. And basically all it's telling you is, yes, no, we saw something, we didn't see anything. That's valuable because if you've got, it's not unusual to have 50 plus, bait boxes, bait stations on a property. If 38 of them had no motion, there's an awful lot of labor savings and wear and tear on your staff that have just happened just because nothing happened in those. And then you go figure out what happened in the ones that did have motion. So the motion is detected. This, by the way, can also be done with game cameras. We've integrated a Tacticam into our system too, so you can do this with video and images as well. And it goes to something called a gateway, which is powered by a special kind of distinct radio wave system called LoRaWAN. And I won't get into what that is, but it's important that it's not Wi-Fi, because if you have a commercial client, you tell them that you're hooking this thing up to their Wi-Fi, you shouldn't be doing that because that's a cyber no-no. Anyway, cyber is an important thing for large clients, and we are SOC 2 certified. So we use this system that basically quarantines the system away from their treasury, from their IP, et cetera. So the gateway gets a signal. It goes into the cloud. We have AI and an algorithmic system. We call it the alert engine that assesses this motion, because not every motion is a rodent, and some motion, maybe 50 of them, are one rodent. So you don't want to overwhelm the tech with false positives and with bing bing bing. It becomes like Chicken Little, right? It's like the sky's falling, sky is falling. That's not a good system. So we then filter that out, and we only deliver, in the great, in the best case, relevant data. So that's basically the solution. It's a sensor in a box or outside. It talks to the gateway. The gateway is kind of the connectivity. It then pushes that to the cloud, which then kicks out an alert with, in our case, we call it an incident, because usually they're bundled alerts to multiple alerts. And also the AI will also produce a recommended action. I'm going to go on now. You get a interesting, dilemma from that. And Courtney was going into it just a moment ago. So what do you do if you get one of these alerts and you are scheduled to go every 15th of the month and it's only the first of the month, right? Well, that's, we've seen some of our customers have actually decided that they create these little SWAT teams. And so most of their techs are still doing the usual routing system, because it's important to go and show yourself and show your brand on site. It's important to do the inspections. It's important to do, and obviously rodent control is only one thing that pest control industry does. But these little SWAT teams have been pulled back by some of our PCOs, and they go out only on demand. So if there's a threshold that's reached, or if there's a clear indication of a trend that, this looks like an infestation that's building, that's when they go out. And interestingly, as I said, some of the PCOs have actually made them also the only teams that go out and deploy rodenticide, which saved you a lot of money on certifying people. Anyway, this is another kind of basic sense of chart that shows you how it works. We have an app that it goes into. It can go into a dashboard, and the incident notification can be SMS. They can be email, and obviously, if there are images, they can also be on the desktop dashboard where people can go through them. The nice thing about the artificial intelligence that has been layered onto this is that it does vastly reduce the number of not just false positives, but the number of things you have to sort through to figure out what's going on a site, whether it's an image, a video, or an alert. Then I'll do one more slide here, and then I want to turn it over to Courtney. So the thing that I was talking about before, we call it outside the box. These are our little sensors. I said they look like hockey pucks. I guess they do. They can be put into traps. That's a VM trap there. Or they can be deployed in really interesting places. And we've got one instance where somebody at one of the largest shopping malls in America has used them exclusively outside of bait station. And after 3 months, and this is an account they had for decades, they were shocked at the amount of activity they were seeing, mostly overnight. And so they took some steps and reduced rodent activity within a month to 56% lower than it was at the end of their 3-month data review. So this is really effective. It's very empirical stuff, because the next month, if you've taken the right steps, you've done the exclusion work, you've identified where the harborage is, you can prove that you got it right. And having this data is also really important for people like pharmaceutical production or the food distribution or warehousing industry, because they need these compliance reports to prove they're doing it and doing it right. And so to have data as opposed to just a clipboard saying that, yeah, Joe was here twice last month, he seems to be doing a good job. Here you get some empirical data. So Courtney, I know you guys have got some big food distribution customers, and can you talk a little bit about what you think these kind of deployments can help you with?
Absolutely. So one of the examples that we have is a large food processing facility, and they were having an issue with rodents, and they had their threshold was pretty much 0. They're an audited facility, so we needed to make sure that we were taking care of their rodent issue. So we deployed these monitors throughout, and what we were able to identify was a rodent runway that we could not see with our eyes visually, but we kept having alerts going off in a certain area. So again, that goes back to what we had been saying earlier, that we're no longer having to go around and check every device in there, every single service, when there could be hundreds of devices based off of the size and the scope of the account. So we were able to really dial in on where that activity was based off of this remote monitoring. And lo and behold, there was an opening that you could not see with your with the naked eye. There were a lot of different items in the way, and we had to move a bunch of different processing items, and we were able to see where those rodents were coming in, and then we were able to seal that and prevent them from coming in, and then you immediately saw a reduction in the activity on the account. So that was a huge win for us. And actually this week we have a very large facility in Boston that also is a very sensitive account, and they're kind of cushioned in between other it's in basically a skyscraper in Boston, and they have other stores and places around them too. So they don't have full control over the facility because they don't own it, and there are a lot of different businesses within that building. So we know that the tolerance is zero for them. So we wanted to provide a better service for them and also be able to identify where these where activity might be. Thankfully, they're in really good shape as far as they don't have a lot of pest activity right now, but we want to be proactive, going back to what Mike said, for the future. So we're going to be installing many of these sensors at the end of this week to this account. And it was definitely a great conversation that our team had with the facility and the contact person there to tell them and demonstrate a way in which we can see, even if they're, 40 miles away from our office, that we can see in real time where things are happening. So if they're going to be audited or there's a concern, we know where to focus on. So we're really excited to continue to work through this and deploy these sensors throughout our customer base. And one of the things that we're working through now is how can we layer this in with our existing service and our existing customers. It's a different beast to start with our new customers and have this protocol, but now it's talking to our existing customers and also saying, hey, we can offer this service to you, and here are the benefits of it. And here's why it is so advantageous for you to be doing it, because this is going to become commonplace for pest control. But we like to be on the forefront and make sure that we're understanding the technology and we're able to explain that to our customer base as we continue to roll this out.
Thanks, Courtney. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of do quickly, because I really think this is a large group and there's going to be questions. I want to give time for questions. Give you a sense of, this is our native dashboards. Ultimately, this type of data, if it's open API or RESTful API, which it's a tech term for kind of plug and play, maybe, it can be integrated into the CRM, the customer relationship management systems of a pest control operator who doesn't want to just use, this, because, people possibly don't want to have multiple apps or sign-ins. So, but this is the native version. And what you can do is really see, this is stuff that you just simply didn't exist 10 years ago. What happened today? What happened this week? How are my devices battery-wise? What are the hourly trends, the weekly heat map? Where are the rodents showing up and at what hour? It's a pretty cool piece of, technology. And so ultimately, if you're looking at a shopping mall here, you can focus in on the places that, were the busiest. And you don't need to go to so many places that that technician, again, it's not a small issue, workman's comp. Bending down, and I couldn't do it at my age. I couldn't do this job if it was manual like that. But besides that, if this is deployed widely and deployed outside the box and healing spaces, you don't have to get on a ladder. There's a lot of risk that's mitigated there. But when the dashboard gives you this data, and this also obviously is available on a mobile phone as well, it really helps you understand what you need to do when you get there. And all of this, of course, can be configured for systems that are already, subscribed to by our customers and other people's customers. It's basically an integration project, mostly not a very difficult one. But the labor savings, the risk mitigation, the fact that you can now really provide your customer and regulators with a sheet of paper that shows what happened last month. And that sheet of paper is not, just a bunch of marks with a pencil. It's data that's, you can go back and audit. So I think this is really a game changer for the industry. And we've finally got to the level now where when companies like mine go out and deploy, the question is no longer, does this work? It's really the questions that Courtney was just getting to, which is how do I integrate this into my business model? What is the benefit that I'm going to derive from this that's going to allow me not to just dump the cost onto the customer, but rather, you're going to, kind of produce some ROI for the business, for the PCO, and then the impact on the next contract that's being negotiated is a little less severe. But one way or another, you're moving from an episodic weekly, or monthly visit to 24/7, and that should be worth something, right? So I want to kind of move on. The rest of this is kind of not all that interesting to a professional audience. We did have one thing I wanted to show here that we were discussing, kind of the impact of what happens when somebody deploys and then sits down with our folks after a month and sees what happened. So in many cases, people have never seen data like this before. The pest control operator may have had a customer for, as I said, for a decade, but has never had access to this kind of a visibility of what's going on the site. Now suddenly you see it, and you see when we had this data in week 2, we had a data review, and boom, boy, did they knock the rodent activity down, and it kept going down. And at some point, it's going to plateau. Obviously, rodents are clever creatures; they figure things out. But in a commercial kitchen, this is pretty dramatic stuff. And we've got many of those things across the industry. Remote monitoring has proven itself capable of doing this fairly quickly. So I wanted, as I said, I didn't want to do too much on the PowerPoint. I think the questions will be handled by someone other than me, right? Somebody's going to be the wrangler of questions here. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that great presentation, Michael and Courtney. We definitely have some time for the Q&A portion right now. So as a reminder, if you have any questions for our speakers, please submit them through the Q&A function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. We already have quite a few questions already, so I thought we would start with what is the difference in cost utilizing this technology versus the traditional IPM model?
That's a good question. Obviously, it's going to depend on a lot of things. The use case, if it's a very large site, the more you deploy, it typically for our company and our competitors, generally speaking, volume means that you're going to get a better rate. The general cost structure is for remote monitoring, as opposed to, for instance, the Bell trap, which is pretty well known in the industry, which are Bluetooth, where you're buying a big box. It's like a hardened product. In our model, it's a retrofit. You just buy the sensor and the gateway, and we show you how to make it work with your existing inventory of bait stations and traps. And that's attractive to some people because it's a big cost to have to replace stuff. So that's basically about, it's going to cost you probably about $900 for a small site in hardware cost. And then each sensor you light up is going to be between $5 and about $2, depending on how large you go, every month. So it's a data subscription, essentially. The hardware is a one-time cost. It's a write-off. In fact, there's a really good tax deduction this year. I think it's set 179 or something like that. I don't know. But apparently you could write the whole thing off as a tax deduction. But that's typical. That's a capital expenditure. But the hardware, for many of us, it's really beside the point. We're using certain gateways, certain sensors right now. If we find a better one, we'll change. We're not a hardware company. We're a software company. We want to make those things as cost effective to deploy as possible, and then do the AI and the intelligence part of it in the cloud, because we can constantly improve it without even telling you we're doing that. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to change your sensor. So it's a long way of saying there is a cost. It's very, very much eccentric. I mean, it's going to depend on what you're doing. It's a small restaurant, probably going to cost you $1,000 for 10 sensors and $5 a month for each sensor you light up. In our company, if you turn the sensor off, you stop paying. So you can move it to another place, light it up 2 months later, then you start the $5 again. But that $5 is a very small portion of our business. Most people are in the 1,000, 10,000 sensor realm, and that means they're paying less than that per month. I hope that answered a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so next, how accurate is the detection? So can it differentiate between a mouse and a rat, for example?
Courtney, I'll take this one, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, two things about that. Number one, a lot of pest control companies are now deploying game cameras. We integrate any game camera in the world, but we have a particular deal with Tacticam, which is one of the market leaders. So obviously there, you can identify the species immediately. And it's the same model. It's $5 per month per camera or something like that. If you do it with a PIR sensor, generally speaking, the behavioral activity can identify and distinguish between rats and mice, but not at first. When you first put the sensors out there, it's not going to be obvious. However, etymology is such that they are very different creatures. They react differently. They tend not to hang out together. So I mean, ultimately, I think that, and then of course the inspection, the time you have to inspect because of the lack of need to go around and open every trap, means that you can really look at the actual physical evidence of what that creature is. So between cameras, behavioral activity, and then the physical inspection, that's how we would define what it is. And obviously, there are times when you get something that's not a mouse or a rat, and generally speaking, that activity is usually very different. And the PI sensor for a squirrel, for instance, is a chip. They're all over the place. They don't harbor in boxes usually, and we eventually can figure that out remotely. But it's better, once you get serious activity, the physical, and this goes back to the question of whether this is going to take people's jobs. Now, if you deployed our system and then did nothing else, all you'd do is you'd know how many rodents are in there, but it wouldn't prevent any of them or get rid of any of them. You'd just be basically monitoring them. So there is still very much a role for the pest control professionals to go in there and take action.
Perfect. Yeah, we have a lot of questions about how this tech works. So how can you tell the difference between, one anxious rodent that triggers the monitor 10 times and 10 actual different rodents?
That's pattern recognition for the most part. Ultimately, will we get it right 100% of the time? No, but usually if there are a series of alerts in a particular corner or area of a site, and that pattern is sequential, you can almost see, okay, this was a mouse that ran across, went into this trap, then went by this sensor, and then took off there. And so AI helps us with that. Obviously, we don't have people back at Mouse Central sitting there going, it's a mouse, it's one mouse. This is AI, and so AI. If anybody, I'm sure most people have tried that GPT or Claude or something. They are not brilliant. They're stunning what they can do, but they also make mistakes. So the nice thing about AI and doing the things we're doing in the cloud is that it'll correct itself and never make that mistake again. So it gets better. It's what's called machine learning. And so ultimately, I think those patterns are identifiable, and especially if they happen multiple times. And so you can really get a sense of this is the same creature doing the same thing day after day.
All right. Next, do you see a version of this for insect pest control coming in the future?
Uh, Funny you should ask. We just launched, we used to, this product in our world was called EverSmart Rodent. And then we took all the learnings from that and the learnings from working with professionals like Courtney, Dr. Bobby Corrigan, who's on our advisory board, and we invited a partner in, Rodent, which is a Japanese company, who do similar things on, fly lights and in small insect, crawling insect traps and bed bug traps. So yeah, we've recently rolled that out. But in the first quarter of 2026, we'll be able to extend this to those creatures as well.
Nice. Okay, are there any examples of this type of detection and reporting system being deployed at scale beyond a single location, but many at the same time? So this person was thinking of maybe citywide.
Courtney, are you aware of anything like that?
I do know that it's being used in New York City to help address pest issues through the city itself. We're not a part. Our company is not a part of that, but I do believe that that is actively happening. I think one of the questions that I've seen pop up a couple of times too is, other than these large scale like food processing facilities, for example, where else would this be valuable? And I saw a couple of questions regarding the residential. And I will tell you that that was our first question when we started our partnership of when can we make this available for residential? And it really comes down to those gateways that Mike was talking about, because you need that gateway to be in an area that it can give coverage. So in large communities, for example, so if you have a lot of condos or like 55 and up, you can put a gateway and that covers a significant area. I think it's up to 2-ish square miles is the coverage for that. So it can be cost prohibitive right now for residential unless you're doing this at scale. So if you have larger communities, that's kind of where we're looking. And I know that there are some other pest control companies that are partnered with MicroShare that are looking into these large communities residentially. Doing it at just one house right now doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I know that the folks over there are working diligently because that is an ask that I know a lot of companies have, because that's really going to set companies apart and the industry apart, combined with the fact that we can now also couple this with pest control identification of pests other than rodents too. So this is, it's definitely not in its infancy stage, but I think traction we're going to gain in the next 12 to 18 months is really going to revolutionize what is happening and the way in which our customers expect service to be delivered.
Yeah, and I would add, so we've got a lot of experiences in hospitals, in college campuses, Harvard, for instance, New York City. Dr. Bobby, who's I mentioned is on our advisory board, is running a project right now in the sewer system in New York, where he's deploying our sensors to. It's interesting because the use case there is not, are there rodents? Obviously, there are rodents. It's how many are there, and where are they right now? It's almost like following a herd of elk. I mean, they're gigantic populations of them that migrate through the sewers, and so New York wants to be able to track that. And similarly, I think Boston, Oslo, and Norway we're working with. So yeah, this is starting to get into the kind of smart city world. In Europe, interestingly, the gateway issue is not a big deal because, and this is true of some very large corporate campuses as well, because LoRaWAN already exists. They've already got a LoRaWAN system running. And that means there's a marginal cost to adding the sensors, really not a big cost at all. And again, sensors are not just for rodents. I mean, there's also things that detect leaks, and there's things that will tell you whether the window is left open. So we do some of that as well because it's complementary to pest control, because as Courtney said earlier in the webinar, if you leave a door open on the loading dock, that is almost certainly eventually going to cause a pest of some sort to come in.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I'm excited to share. If you are a current NEHA member and still have questions, we'll be holding an exclusive live Q&A session with all our experts from this rodent control webinar series immediately after this webinar concludes. So if you are a NEHA member and have additional questions for our experts, Janet, Michael, and Courtney, we invite you to attend this event beginning in just a few minutes at 3:15 p.m. Eastern. And I believe the link to register for that will be dropped in the chat. So we look forward to seeing you there. In addition, we're excited to announce our next Vector webinar series in early 2026, which will be focused on bed bugs. The first part, Bed Bugs Uncovered, will be held on January 28th and will focus on bed bug biology, practical strategies for inspections, recognizing key signs of infestation, and control methods. And the second part, Evolving Tools for Bed Bug Control, will be held on February 17th and will delve deeper and explore the latest advances in bed bug control, like new insecticides, detection methods, and integrated management strategies. So we invite you to register using the links in the chat, and we hope to see you there. And finally, NEHA's mission to advance environmental health is made stronger through the support of our community. Contributions help us provide scholarships, support critical research, and expand training opportunities for the professionals who protect our communities every day. If you're interested in supporting this work, we invite you to learn more about how your gift can ensure health professionals have the resources they need to meet today's challenges and tomorrow's opportunities. So thank you again, Michael and Courtney, for your great presentation and answering so many questions, and everyone here for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much.